Welcome to The Focal Point, where we challenge traditions and seek truth. I'm your host, Aubrey Killian, and today I'm honored to welcome a good friend and trusted confidant, Pete Rambo. Pete, welcome to The Focal Point.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm usually on the other side of the interview, so this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward.
Our pathway for this evening is we're going to be looking at two bold topics. Firstly, the global resurgence of Torah observance and the uncomfortable yet scriptural supported reality of polygyny for these Torah observance. So, Pete, let's get right into it. What do you think is fueling the modern Torah observant movement today?
I think that a number of things, that the time has come for this, because for the longest time, religion, Christianity being a religion, it's based on Scripture, but for a long time, religion in general has been the playing field of those who are trained in the seminaries and those who are trained in the little places, and the specialized knowledge was kept there. With the advent of modern technology, the average person like you, me, others, many around the world have the ability to take something as simple as your cell phone and access word studies, access lexicons, access a lot of things that previously were textbooks. To have access to all of that, you'd have to have a library practically in your home. So with many now asking questions, why is the church not being as effective as it could be or as it should be? Why is it that the scriptures say one thing, but my pastor says something different? Why is it that I'm not getting or seeing the fruit and the blessings that the Father says that I should have? They start digging in, and as soon as they start digging in, they start realizing that maybe there's some doctrines of men that have been standing between them and the path to righteousness that the Father clearly lays out in Scripture. And so I think that's the big thing that's waking people up. They now have access.
Yes, and so that brings us to Exodus 21:10, that clearly shows us that there is an expectation that a man has, that a man, irrespective of what emotional emotional situation he finds himself with his wife, it either be a good or in a bad situation, he still has to clothe her, feed her, and provide her with the conjugal rights that she requires, because we understand that conjugal rights were really for the conception of children.
Progeny, yes.
Yes. Care to comment?
So one thing to consider is that a woman's security long-term is a son, because a son continues to produce income and can continue to look after her well after her husband is deceased. So the estate may be able to take care of part of that, but a son is a guarantee. Further, a son ensures that she continues to have representation in Kol Israel, continues to have representation in the house. So for a woman, we find out all the way through Scripture that there's a degree of reproach if she doesn't have a son, and ultimately that's the desire of every woman, is to have at least one son. Now, we look, for example, at the story of Jacob. Jacob had Leah and Rachel and Bilhah and Zilpah, but Christendom would tell us, oh, he only wanted Rachel. He didn't want any of the other ones. Well, nobody twisted his arm, and he produced offspring with all four of them, with Leah having the lion's share of 6 sons. Half of Israel comes directly through the lineage of Leah.
I mean, we understand why we're making that reference. But I mean, there's a lot of research now coming out, and there's now a new position in seminary schools that are coming to the forth, where a lot of the interpretations, there's a reevaluation on how Paul goes about when he speaks to the synagogue in Rome, in the book of Romans. He doesn't speak to the Romans, he speaks to the synagogue in Rome, the diaspora in Rome at that stage. But a lot of these, there's a lot going on at this moment in seminary schools where people say, but listen, for you to understand Paul, you need to understand that he speaks from Torah. He doesn't, you don't interpret him. He didn't have the authority to make new law. He didn't have
Right.
he wasn't clothed with the jurisdiction where to promulgate. I mean, these are terms we understand in law. A lot of theologians don't understand it because they don't work with it. But we see this, and there's an excellent book for people out there. They Loved Torah by David Friedman, where he speaks to this aspect that when we look at everything in the book of Galatians, Corinthians, in the book of Romans, we need to look at it out of a lens, out of a Torah observance lens, and to see how Paul is actually redirecting these congregations, these assemblies. He's redirecting them to Torah observance. Care to comment?
Oh, absolutely. Paul was a Torah scholar. He was steeped in both the oral and written traditions of the word. And one of the things that, as a Pharisee of Pharisees, one of the things that he had to walk away from was the oral traditions of Judaism. There was a Judaism of that day, not unlike the Judaism of this day, that had oral traditions. And that was the leaven of the Pharisees that Yeshua often warned about. And church is very much the same way. And I think increasingly we're figuring out that we've got many man-made doctrines wrapped up in there, and they have to be corrected. When we get a proper lens for Paul and recognize that he was battling, he was in a multi-front battle. He was battling against the oral traditions of the Jews. He was battling against the Gnostics that were out there as his primary fronts, and he was speaking to the Gentiles. Well, when we say Gentiles, we assume it's just everybody who's not Jewish, and we tend to think Jewish and Israelite are the same thing, and they're not. The Jews from the house of Judah comprise a part of Israel. So all Jews are Israelites, but not all Israelites are Jews. What really happened was more than 700 years before the Messiah, the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, was dispersed. They were carried off the land by the Assyrians, but the prophecies over and over and over and over again say that they will come back. And one of the things I think Paul understood is those out there that are the Gentiles, because the prophecy over Ephraim in Genesis chapter 48 specifically said that he would become the fullness of the nations, or the fullness of the Goyim, the Gentiles, right? This is Ephraim. This is one of the tribes. This is the kingly tribe of the northern kingdom. And so at the end of the day, what Paul was really doing was recognizing that, hey, you guys out there that you broke the covenant and you were divorced from the Father and you were sent away, and there's no way for you to come back, because a man who divorces his wife and sends her away, Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1-4, sends her away and she marries another, he can never take her back. And Jeremiah chapter 3 begins with that, saying, if a man divorces her and sends her away, can he ever take her back? No, he can't, except the father had a way. The groom came and died in order that the covenant would be broken, and then he was raised in newness of life, so that now in newness of life there's no longer a covenant separating, or a covenant that had been severed to prevent him from taking back the northern kingdom. This is all the subject of my second book, titled 10 Parts in the King.